everybody's doing well. I hate we're having to do our class under these circumstances, but it's the way it is, and we're going to do our best to get through this and finish out our year. So a couple things I'm going to want you to know about moving forward. Remember, for 6th grade, the Zoom meeting time on Wednesday is going to be 1 o'clock. It'll probably take no more than half an hour. But 1 o'clock, if you feel like you have questions about your notes, if you feel like you have anything you don't understand, if you want me to ask you any review questions, that kind of stuff. But that'll be at 1 o'clock, and I'll be sending the codes for that hopefully Monday evening. Also, hopefully you took advantage of the extra credit paper. Those can be turned in by emailing them directly to me. Which y'all have my email address, but it's rrooney@cambridgeacademy.org. So hopefully y'all did do that. That'll be a good way to get a jump on this 9 weeks. Test is Thursday, and that's why I have the Zoom meeting on Wednesday in case anybody has any questions or concerns. And I'll have that ready for you on the Gradebook Wizard probably Thursday morning early, and you'll be able to turn those in and get them done. You can email them back to me. So with that being said, I'm going to move on into notes in our chapter, Empires of Asia. And the 3 empires we're going to look at today were 3 of the major Muslim empires between the 14 and 1800s. But there were three major ones: the Ottoman Empire, the Persian Empire, and the Mughal Empire. And they conquered and controlled much of Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and India. These were the territories that they controlled, and they weren't exactly allies of each other either. The Ottoman Empire, during the late 1200s, Turkish clans calling themselves Ottoman Turks. They called themselves that after their first leader, Osman, settled part of Asia Minor and began conquest to build an empire. They conquered much of the Byzantine territory, and they made Constantinople their capital. 1453. I got that information in your notes. We've already studied the Byzantine Empire and the building of Constantinople, so you should be familiar with that. And of course, that was the eastern half of the Roman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire maintained a strong navy in the Mediterranean to protect they had a pretty good trade there. But the Europeans, Western Europeans, and really Central and even a lot of the Eastern Europeans were pretty concerned. Remember, they were predominantly Christian. That was the area that they called Christendom. And Europeans under Philip II of Spain fought and defeated the Ottoman fleet in the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. That's a little fact you got in there that you'll need to know about. It was October 7th of 1571, and it was a fleet of coalition of Catholic states arranged by Pope Pius V, led by Philip II, and they inflicted a major defeat on the Ottoman Empire. So that was a pretty important and strategic defeat. And remember, that was a coalition of the Catholic states. We've talked about the Protestant Reformation, but 1571, this is following the Protestant Reformation. So a number of the Protestant countries didn't get involved in this. Anyway, Suleiman I was one of the early Ottoman rulers who strengthened Muslim forces. This is all prior to Lepanto. He ruled 1520 to 1566. He was given the name the Lawgiver for how he organized the Ottoman laws, and he did a pretty good job with that. So that'll be maybe an easy way to remember with the nickname, and who organized. If you're asked the question, who organized, was known for his work in organizing Ottoman laws. So that would be one of the early rulers you would need to know. He acted as both the Sultan and the Caliph. The Sultan's a political ruler. It's a term in your notes you need to know. The Caliph is a religious leader. So if he had both those terms, if he had both those together, Obviously, that would make him an extremely powerful. He really had the final say in everything. He had absolute authority. Another term I did put in your notes is Grand Vizier, meaning like a prime minister, effective head of the government. There may be one appointed under the the caliph or the sultan, but they would answer to him. Ottomans recruited officers from among conquered peoples of the empire. Their empire was very vast, different people, different religions and customs, but they recruited people in from all over. And one of the groups of people, the Janissaries, came from the Balkans, where Christian families were required by the Ottomans to turn over some of their young boys, their sons, to the government, and the boys were forced to convert to Islam, and then they were trained to fight at a very early age. So you can imagine, we've talked about the Crusades already in the class, but you can imagine the bad blood there, but in particular in situations where your sons are being taken, forced to convert, and then they're taken away from you, and then they're trained to be warriors. Excuse me. Ottoman social class is what you'll need to know from there. The ruling class is made up of the Sultan's family and high government officials. The nobility administered the agricultural estates, and the peasants worked on the estates mostly, and they were the largest class. And generally, that's just kind of how it is. Every time we study the social classes of most places, very similar in most of them. But you'll need to know those social classes, and they're listed in your notes. The Ottoman civilization borrowed many elements from the Byzantine, Persian, and Arab cultures. Remember, they transformed the Christian city of Constantinople. They transformed it into a Muslim one, where they changed the name to Istanbul. And, that was, named after Constantine. And the Byzantine Empire and Constantinople thought of Christianity. The Hagia Sophia was a church there. We studied that. Some of y'all wrote papers on that from when we were doing the Byzantine Empire. It was very famous church at the time, and that got converted into a mosque. So once again, you can imagine the feelings of people or Western Christians or the other Christians in the region when this happened at the time. The Ottomans also attacked Christian Europe, but they were defeated at the Battle of Vienna, and this is in 1683. I put a note in there. Polish King John Sobieski led European forces to victory, and was hailed by the Pope as the savior of Christendom. And just the location of Vienna in Europe, if the forces they were conquered there, assuming they would have just kept moving west. So that was a pretty significant victory for Christian Europe. Another dynasty of the time was to the east of the Ottoman Empire was Persia and the Safavid Persian dynasty. 1500 Shiite Muslims, which were bitter enemies of the Ottoman Turks, is a different branch of Islam, conquered the land of present-day Iran. One of their famous leaders, Ismail I, Shiite leader, conquered and unified the numerous peoples living there and declared himself to be the Safavid dynasty, or the start of the Safavid dynasty. And their rulers required that all Persian subjects accept the Shiite form of Islam. The Turks were Sunni. These were two different sects of Islam, which we mentioned in a prior chapter, and they were bitter enemies, the two. So and they still have clashes today, the Shiites and the Sunnis. One of the early Persian rulers, Shah Abbas, came to rule in 1587, and during his reign, he wound up spreading trade in his culture and diplomacy into most of the Muslim world. He's probably one of the more famous rulers from the time. But I have a note in there in your notation about him in your notes In the Mughal Empire, this was taking place in mostly in India, in that section. After several ruthless leaders, one of their more famous leaders, Akbar, came to power, and he recognized that he ruled over most people. He was ruling over Hindus. We've studied Hinduism earlier in the year, and he encouraged religious tolerance, which was a little bit different than some of his predecessors. And he tried to end quarrels between the Hindus and the Muslims, which was, once again, he was a little unlike some of his predecessors and the people who followed him. Remember, Muslims were monotheistic. They believe in one God. Hindus polytheistic, worshiping many deities. And they had differences about their sacred food, social organization, and religious customs. And you could see where that would certainly lead to conflict. But he was a little different. Akbar, he was curious about all religions, and he even invited scholars of different faiths to his court, basically, to learn about these faiths. And he even tried to create a new religion that he called the Divine Faith, which was a combination of, I guess, what he considered the best elements of all faiths. The Mughal Empire did start to decline as rulers, the following rulers, they began persecuting other religions again. One of the structures that was built during this time that still stands today was the Taj Mahal. There's a picture of it in your book, or you could always look that up. That occurred during this time as well, something you'll need to know. But that part of the section we'll stop through today. Tomorrow we'll look at the Chinese dynasties, and then we'll get through with that, and then we will we'll have the review opportunity for you on Wednesday, and then we'll test on Thursday. So think of any questions you might have, and we'll talk on Wednesday. Thanks.